Time for a much, much different Christmas movie than the ones we've talked about here. We have a lot of the same kind of creatures you see in other ones for kids, but needless to say, this movie ain't for kids. It's definitely for the adults, and let's just say that it comes around a time when Christmas movies were getting more adult and pretty more awesome, too. We've already talked about a couple of them so far with The Night Before and A Very Harold and Kumar 3D Christmas. And now we have Krampus, or Krampus as it says in the movie, but when his dysfunctional family clashes over the holidays, young Max, played by MJ Anthony, is disillusioned and turns his back on Christmas. But little does he know, this lack of festive spirit has unleashed the wrath of Krampus, a demonic force of ancient evil intent on punishing non-believers. All hell breaks loose as beloved holiday icons take a monstrous life of their own, laying siege to the fractured family's home and forcing them to fight for each other if they hope to survive. This is one of those movies where, 20 years before this movie came out, you could never release this without somebody going at... A major studio wouldn't be releasing this unless you'd have a huge protest coming from parents who are just like, you can't do a Christmas horror movie. This is around the same time. This is like, remember, over 30 years prior to this, we had Silent Night, Deadly Night, and people threw a fit. Angry parents threw a fit. And that movie ended up not doing well. It did well, but TriStar had to pull the film out of theaters, and then they put it back in theaters shortly afterwards, and it went on to become a cult hit in general. But yeah, this is a movie that clearly would not play with kids whatsoever, even though it has a PG-13 rating. This ain't a kids movie, but at the same time, it was one of the more enjoyable Christmas movies I had seen in a long, long time. Not since Arthur Christmas did I find a Christmas movie like this that was just so enjoyable, and maybe one of my favorite horror movies. I'm not a big horror movie person, but man, this movie was just awesome. I really dug the hell out of this. It was just one hell of a good time at the movies. There's tributes to so many things, classic horror comedies of the past, like Ghostbusters and Gremlins, and even you have an opening shot that's reminiscent of Psycho, but it also takes modern horror tropes and make it work, like the demonic toys are reminiscent of the toys from Five Nights at Freddy's, which, it's even scarier than that game is at times. Plus, the movie does what good horror films should do, create new scares while also using some of the older, more cliche tropes, and even make them come off as really scary too. The jump scares in this movie are surprisingly really good. These are usually the biggest problems with most of today's horror movies, but hey, when you have a guy like Michael Dougherty, who nearly 10 years prior to this gave us the equally as good Trick or Treat, how can you go wrong? This is a guy that clearly wants to create horror movies that are absolutely different than the crap hole of horror films that we get today. Well, maybe not today. 2025 has been a pretty good year for horror movies when you think about it, but he uses old school techniques to get the best scares, and he delivers and makes it clear that in this movie, doing for Christmas what he did with Halloween and Trick or Treat. And what's unique about this is the cast that they have in here. You got a lot more comedic stars in here, like Adam Scott, David Koechner, Conchita Ferrell, but you also have more prestigious names like Alison Tolman from Fargo and Toni Collette. And, they all play their parts very well here. Even the kid actors do a very good job of handling this. The visuals overall are great. The visuals overall are so well done. The whole movie is set up in this dark, sepia tone feel, and the mostly practical effects in here are well done. Even the CG effects don't look half bad either. The Krampus monster, when you see it in full, it just looks so freaking badass, man. He looks exactly what you'd expect to see when you think of a giant goat-like monster, and he just looks incredible. Now, if there is one criticism I have towards the film, the movie does kind of fall into a little bit of predictability in the story, especially towards the end. However, the ending for the movie and the last few minutes of the film, the way it's shot and the way it ends, it's a cliche tease for a sequel, but nevertheless, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty tense and scary with the way the camera and the music and the actors' looks and expressions made the scene just work so much better than it could have. It would have been so easy to just make this a cheap little tease for a potential sequel, but the way it's done, it just works so much better than I could have ever expected. And again, that's kind of how I feel about the movie itself. Krampus is a movie that has a lot of elements that work to its advantage. A great cast, a great story, a great build-up, great horror, great bits of comedy, great visuals, an excellent ending. It not only works as one of the best Christmas movies of recent memory, but one of the best new horror movie classics. If you're looking for a great horror comedy in the tradition of Gremlins and Ghostbusters, look no further than Krampus, man. This is a movie that is definitely one to check out, and I think opened the door for more risque adult Christmas movies, especially one from Universal that we're going to get to in a couple of days' time, so stay tuned for that.